Hey everyone. Tonight we're taking a deep dive into a truly intense and world-changing period, the time of the Black Death. We're going to explore what it must have been like to actually live through that devastating sickness, the daily realities, and the looming fear. Before we get started, if you're enjoying these historical journeys we take together, please take a second to hit that like button. It really helps others find our content. And if you haven't already, consider subscribing so you don't miss out on future explorations of the past. Also, please drop a comment and tell us where in the world you're watching from and what time it's for you. It's always fascinating to see the diverse group of history enthusiasts joining us from across the globe. Now, maybe dim the lights a bit to set the atmosphere. Perhaps put on a quiet fan if you find that soft background hum helps you focus. And let's settle in together for tonight's immersive journey into a time of darkness and unexpected transformation. Imagine this. You just woken up in Europe and the year is 1347. The morning air feels cool and carries the scent of the countryside as you open your eyes and stretch out on your simple straw-filled mattress. You're not in a private bedroom with soft linens like you might be used to in our time. Instead, you in a single-room cottage, a small shared space where your entire family lives, eats, and sleeps. The walls around you are made of what's called wattle and daub, a sturdy framework of woven wood filled in with a practical mixture of mud, clay, and straw. It's surprisingly effective at keeping the biting cold out during the harsh European winters. Although the roof made of thatch, while charming, sometimes leaks when the heavy rains come down. As you slowly rise, the familiar smells of your daily life fill your nose, the lingering smokiness from last night's hearth fire, where the family cooked and kept warm, the constant earthy scent rising from the packed dirt floor beneath your bare feet, and that rather distinct, slightly musky smell that comes from people who don't bathe very often. The truth is, personal hygiene, as we understand it today, was quite different back in medieval times. Washing was not a regular habit for most people. The somewhat comforting aspect of this reality was that everyone in your small community pretty much smelled the same, so it was not really something anyone particularly noticed or commented on. Your stomach starts to rumble, a familiar signal that it's time for the first meal of the day. If you're fortunate, there might be some coarse leftover bread from yesterday's baking, though it's likely to be rock solid and difficult to chew by now. The common way to make it palatable was to soften it, by dipping it in some weak ale. Surprisingly to our modern sensibilities, even young children drank weak ale in these times. It wasn't about the alcohol content as much as the fact that it was often considered safer to drink than the local water sources, which could be easily contaminated and cause terrible sickness. Outside your small, humble home, the village is already stirring to life with the sounds of a new day. You can hear the distant, lowing calls of cattle in the fields, the frantic clucking of chickens scratching in the farmyards, and the early morning calls of your neighbors as they begin their daily round of essential work. The vast majority of people here are peasants, deeply connected to the land. They work tirelessly, either as free tenants who pay rent in goods or labor to the local lord who owns the land, or as serfs, who are bound to the land itself and must provide extensive labor services to the lord as their primary obligation. Life in your medieval village moves with a certain, predictable rhythm, dictated by the natural world and the traditions passed down through generations. The days are measured by their reliable rising and setting of the sun, marking the beginning and end of the workday. The weeks are punctuated by the solemn toll of the church bells, calling everyone to Mass and reminding them of the spiritual framework of their lives. And the years are defined by the cyclical turning of the seasons, the crucial rhythm of planting seeds in the spring, tending the growing crops through the summer, and the vital harvest in the autumn that would determine survival through the long winter months. It's undeniably a hard life, filled with physical labor and uncertainty, but it's the only way of existence you and everyone you know have ever experienced. What you don't know, what nobody in your small village, or indeed across the vast expanse of Europe has any inkling of yet, is that everything, this predictable rhythm, this established way of life, is about to be shattered. A dark and terrifying shadow is slowly but inexorably creeping across the continent, a force of nature that will transform the very fabric of society in ways that no war or widespread famine has ever managed to do before. The first unsettling whispers of this coming catastrophe reach your isolated village on the hesitant lips of a traveling merchant. These merchants are vital links to the outside world, bringing exotic and coveted goods from faraway places, shimmering silks from the mysterious East, fragrant spices from distant, almost mythical lands. But this time, along with his usual wares, this particular merchant brings something far more ominous. Stories. Terrifying, almost unbelievable stories of a horrific sickness that has been relentlessly devastating entire cities along the well-worn trade routes he has traveled. People are dying by the thousands, he recounts with a hushed voice, struck down with terrifying speed by a mysterious and agonizing illness that brings a sudden, intense fever, grotesquely painful, swellings in the groin and armpits, and an almost certain rapid death. Some of the more devout villagers, upon hearing these dreadful tales, immediately cross themselves, a reflexive gesture of warding off evil, and mutter hurried prayers for divine protection. Others, perhaps more skeptical or simply unable to fully grasp the scale of such devastation, dismiss the alarming rumors as mere exaggerations, the kind of sensational stories that often spread like wildfire, traveling far faster than verifiable truth. The weary merchant, having delivered his unsettling news, moves on to the next village, and for a brief, deceptive while, life in your community continues with its familiar, unhurried pace. But the disturbing rumors persist, carried by other travelers and whispered between neighbors. They become more frequent and undeniably more frightening with each passing month, losing some of their initial incredulity as more and more people report similar accounts. By the time autumn paints the leaves in hues of red and gold, the hesitant whispers have escalated into urgent shouts of alarm. The unimaginable sickness has reached the bustling Mediterranean ports of Europe, the great trading hubs of Messina, Marseille, and Venice. The horrifying accounts now speak of ships arriving in busy harbors, filled with nothing but the silent, decaying corpses of their crews, the sailors having succumbed to the mysterious illness during their ill-fated journey across the sea. God save us all. Your mother murmurs again, her face pale with a dawning fear as she hears the latest grim news, her hand instinctively making the sign of the cross, a plea for divine intervention in the face of an unseen terror. In your small village, a palpable sense of unease begins to settle. People start to prepare as best they can for this unknown threat, though no one truly knows what they are preparing for or what measures might offer any real protection. Some families begin to hoard extra stores of dried grains and salted meats, hoping to weather a potential disruption of supplies. Others start spending even more time in the dimly lit church, their prayers for divine intervention becoming more fervent and desperate. The local wise woman, the village healer, gathers her usual array of familiar herbs and concocts traditional remedies, though whether any of her knowledge will prove effective against this unprecedented and terrifying affliction, no one in the village can possibly say. The first chilling tendrils of the approaching disaster finally reach your region during the cold, bleak months of winter. A neighboring village, close enough that you might walk there in half a day, reports several sudden and inexplicable deaths. The unfortunate victims suffered from raging high fevers, complained of an unquenchable, terrible thirst, and developed strange, ominous black swellings in their armpits and groins. Tragically, very few of those who displayed these horrifying symptoms survived for more than 3 agonizing days. Your village elders, the respected leaders of your small community, gather in hushed and worried meetings to discuss what should be done in the face of this encroaching horror. Some, gripped by fear, vehemently suggest closing the village off entirely to any outsiders, hoping that isolation might offer a shield against the sickness. Others, perhaps more pragmatic or clinging to the necessity of trade and communication for survival, argue that such a complete shutdown is impossible and would lead to starvation. In the end, caught between fear and necessity, life in your village continues with its familiar routines, but now with a heavy, suffocating undercurrent of constant fear and apprehension. Then, one crisp and unusually quiet morning, a young man named Thomas, who works diligently at the village mill, fails to appear for his regular duties. When a concerned neighbor goes to check on him in his small cottage, They find him burning with a terrifyingly high fever, his body drenched in a cold sweat, and a grotesque, painful lump, the size of a hen's egg, visibly swelling on his neck. The unthinkable has happened. The plague has arrived in your village. What follows is a time of unimaginable horror, a descent into a nightmare unlike anything you or anyone in your community could have ever conceived.